Hello everyone, it is your host, your friend, your boy, Jet Black the one and only, here with another exciting live stream. I'm just out of the shower, which is why I'm so wet. Today is July 28th, 2019. I'm going to be talking about my day-to-day. Feel free to smash that like button, tell me how you're doing today in the live chat. Feel free to ask any questions and bring up any discussion topics you'd like to talk about on the stream. Today I hung out with your boys, Winslow, Colin, and Aiden. Bleh. But this morning, I mainly just hung out with your boy Aiden. Aiden and I went to IHOP for breakfast. We talked about Beth's superhero universe. So recently, Beth and I, as a way of bonding, have been doing these three different things. We've been either talking about characters, where I'll introduce a new character to her that she may not have heard about before, and then we talk about the character. I like give her like a little bit of an introduction, and then she tells me whether or not she likes their design or their backstory or their powers. We just kind of discuss that. Another thing Beth and I have been doing to bond, we've been making up like original characters and stories and sharing these characters and story elements with each other and discussing those. And the third big way that Beth and I have been bonding is through text and watch dates, where we'll watch an episode of a show together and we'll then talk to each other via like Messenger about the show. We'll have a discussion. So, oh, yo, Kels, welcome to the stream. It's good to have you. Don't forget to smash that like button. How's your day today? Do you have any questions for your boy? And do you have any discussion topics you'd like to talk about on the stream? Sorry, I'm fresh out the shower, so I'm like soaking wet still. I was just talking about the three ways that Beth and I have been bonding recently and how that connects to me and Aiden hanging out today. So, Aiden and I, we ate breakfast at IHOP and we've been talking about the superhero universe that Beth is currently working on. She's trying to create her own. And Aiden and I had like a pretty good discussion talking about that. Kel said, "Do you not do streams on Saturdays or Fridays?" The issue with Saturdays and Fridays that comes up is that on Fridays I end up either hanging out with Beth or I end up hanging out with like Colin and the guys. And what will end up happening is that I'll end up hanging out with them later than I normally would. I guess that's weird to explain. I end up hanging out with them late at night, especially a Saturday. It's very unlikely that you'll see a stream on a Saturday because me and Beth will normally have like 9 to 10 hour dates kind of thing, where we'll start the date relatively early and then it doesn't end until like a good bit later. So I end up just passing the vlog time a lot of time on Saturdays. And a similar thing with Fridays. On Fridays, I'll either like have a date with Beth on a Friday or I'll be hanging out with the guys on the Friday. And then we don't end up actually wrapping things up until well after the normal vlog time. And then Kels said, "Oh, okay, that's fine. Yeah, no problem, Kels. Always down to clarify. Also, don't forget to smash that like button. Truly appreciate it." So like I was saying, Aiden and I, the highlight of my day actually was like going over different elements of Beth's superhero universe that she created and talking to Aiden about it and like breaking it down and seeing his thoughts. I also did a little bit of rap writing while hanging out with Aiden, and I wrote a rap about like Aiden and I's friendship, and I thought that was really cool. That was another cool moment from today. But after we ate breakfast and hung out for a bit, we went back to his place, wrote raps for a bit, played some WWE 2012 on his Xbox 360, and then once Colin and Dozer showed up, we all started playing together, and we played that for hours. But it was pretty much what I did today. What did you guys do today? And does anyone have any discussion topics or questions? Kel said, "Can you read part two of my power system?" Sure, and I'll post a link to it in the Amino. Then Nerd Tinker said, "Jet, yo, Nerd Tinker, welcome to the stream. It's good to have you. Don't forget to smash that like button. How's your day today? Do you have any questions for your boy? Do you have any discussion topics you'd like to talk about on the stream?" Sorry, I'm like soaking wet. I just got out of the shower. What? Someone posted a picture supposedly of them drinking glue on the Amino. There's a lot of stuff on Amino you'd never expect to see. Let's see. Nerdtinker said, "When are you going to do more game streams?" So, I want to do more Lego DC Supervillains at some point. I bought that game for like 75 bucks. I feel like it has a ton of content that I want to play and I want to jump into. The issue is that I just haven't gotten around to really playing it. I think part of it is that after work, I exercise and shower and everything, and then I end up spending a lot of that time writing or messaging with Beth. So I just end up not playing games, but I'm trying to do more gameplay stuff. The reason why I don't play games during the vlogs as much is mainly because I've been trying to focus more on like the conversation that I have with you guys on stream and not taking away from that by being distracted with a game, if that makes sense. Let's see. Then Kels said blue's really tasty. I really like lemon lime when it comes to stuff like Powerade and Gatorade personally. But real quick, I'm going to post a link to Kels's power system explanation, part two. Let's see. So, in case you guys aren't familiar with Kels's power system, he's working on a webcomic slash manga that's going to be called Poker Game. And he is trying to teach us more about the power system that he's created for that. Um, and we've explored part one in a previous vlog. So now we're finally diving into part two. Beth said we wanted to do a collab stream yesterday, but things came up. That is true. We were going to do a collab stream where we were going to talk about original characters. I was going to talk about superpower battles. Beth was going to talk about. She has like two original universes that she's currently working on. One that has to do with Pokemon, and one that's more of like her superhero universe. And we were going to talk with you guys about you guys' original characters and original stories, and it be just a vlog where everyone can share their different ideas and things they've come up with and ask questions about it. So there will be vlogs sometimes on the weekend. It's just when spending a lot of time with friends and significant others and family on the weekend, the amount of time available for doing vlogs ends up being decreased. You know what I mean? But let's see. We're about to dive into your boy Kels' power system for his webcomic poker game. This is part two. Part one is on the amino. And if you guys want to follow along, I posted a link in the live chat to part two. So Kels put as the heading for this meaning behind one's drive. So your drive represents what you'll do to achieve your goals in life. For example, let's say your goal is to become the number one cook. Your drive could be the power to manipulate the flavor of food. Powers in this series isn't going to be that direct, but you get the point. People who have the same goal can't have the same drive. Since people have different personalities, they will want to accomplish that goal in different ways. I'm still curious to see how your system works for people who have very similar or identical personalities, um, as well as similar and identical goals. So I would like to learn more about how different the powers are from person to person in your webcomic. The next heading that he has says step ups. So what a step up is your drive taking on a different form to overcome an obstacle. Here's an example. Let's say your drive is a sword. Your drive, by the way, being like your power. And you get defeated by someone with long range attacks. To overcome that obstacle, your step up could be your sword turning into a large shield. Um, the step up seems to be like a complete transformation. Like rather than it being your sword gains an additional functionality, it's your sword became a completely different thing. Beth then said to Kells, your power system reminds me somewhat of superpower battles. To which then I would like to ask Beth, why do you feel like Kells' power system reminds you of superpower battles? Like what elements of superpower battles do you feel like relate to Kells' power system, and what elements of Kells' power system do you feel like are reminiscent of superpower battles? Let's see. And then Kells has provided rules for how these step ups work. So I am curious to see how these rules are laid out. So step ups are not upgrades in the sense that they are a superior form of your drive. It's your drive taking on a different form. Yeah, it's like a complete change, which is interesting. Step ups and step downs. Your drive before the step up must share a connection. If your drive is a King of Hearts per se, your step up isn't going to be a spade. In the sword to shield example, to show a connection between the sword and the shield, I would have them share the same color scheme and design elements. I would also make the shield a large, wide blade with the tip at the bottom of the shield. It's, I still think it's kind of weird. So essentially, what you're saying is that the aesthetic of the original drive carries over to the step up, the step down being what the original one is. I still feel kind of weird about it because it becomes a completely different thing in order to adapt to your current situation. Um, does it ever step back down? And why does it change so drastically? Because you're like, it'll look similar. And I'm like, looking similar is one thing, but when the functionality has changed so completely, it just feels like a different thing. Kels said, you'll see later in the post the connection between the sword and the shield. Understandable, Kels. Then Beth said, okay. Then Beth said, so at Kels, is this power system for a story or game? So this power system that Kels has created is for a webcomic slash manga that he plans on creating called Poker Game, which is going to be a sports manga or sports webcomic where people have superpowers and use them to compete in sporting events. And then Kel said, yeah, it's for a webcomic I'm making. In his world, powers are called drives, and the way that you get your powers is that there's a chemical that your body produces only when sleeping. So when that chemical is extracted and then put into you while you're awake, you develop a drive, which is a unique superpower that's based on your unique personality and what goals you want to achieve, which then manifests itself into a poker card that you have. And depending on what your suit is for your poker card, will determine the type of power you manifest, will drive you manifest. So that's a lot of what was covered in part one. Part one covers what all the different suits do, like what all the different card suits do, and that basic information about where powers come from and how they manifest. This part is going over the concept of step ups and step downs, which seems to be how your power can adapt to new obstacles that are introduced, like in your path. Kel said, I do admit the sword to shield example is a bad example. Understandable. What do you think would be a better example? For example, how would it work for the power that you mentioned about a cook whose power lets them edit the properties of like the flavor of food? Like, how would they have like a step up situation? And then how would that step up be similar to the step down? To like the original drive. Let's see. Kel said a better example would be, and then he retracted it. Okay. Let's see. So where were we? So the next part of what he said in part two, step ups cannot be obtained mid battle. Yeah, you mentioned that earlier, that it has to be after an obstacle has actually successfully stopped you. It seems like then you get a step up, which I think is interesting. You must train for a long period of time. What the training is depends on what the obstacle you want to get over is and what you want your step up to be. So, step ups aren't just things that happen, step ups occur because you face an obstacle that you can't overcome. And then after that, you have to train and have the step up in mind that you want to achieve. And with enough training, you'll eventually get that step up. Let's see. The training process can become easier and can give better results by using spirit martial arts. Spirit, what is that? One can possess multiple step ups, but it is very difficult for people to possess multiple at the same time. If someone who's only capable of having one step up tries to gain a second one, it could just never manifest, use up too much energy and stamina to use for it to be useful, or could only be used once. That's very confusing. So, why is it that someone wouldn't be able to have multiple step ups? Is it because they didn't train? Or is it just some people can have more step ups than others? Beth said, excited to see it. So I think that's Beth saying that she'd be excited to see your webcomic slash manga. Then Kel said, a better example would be from a sword to spear, because it doesn't necessarily change the functionality of what it does, but enhances it in some way, I guess. Because a spear and a sword can be used similarly, but a spear has more range than a sword. And it's not necessarily that it enhances it as more as it lets one portion of what it does become more of the priority. So swords have some range, but spears have more range. But swords and spears are functionally similar. Like you can use them to do similar things. And it's not that a spear is quote unquote better than a sword in all cases. It's just for the sake of range, it can go from sword to spear. I guess my question then would be for step ups and step downs, can you, after you step up, step back down? So if you make a sword into a spear, can you then return the spear to a sword if you need it as a sword? Kel said spirit martial arts is what's covered in part three. And then he said some people can just have more step ups than others. That's kind of gross. Um, I think that some people having more step ups than others and aces are two things that I don't really like about the poker game power system. Because they both just seem like arbitrary things where you can have a character who's just better. I'm not really a fan of that. I was fine with aces originally when I thought aces couldn't encompass any of what the other suits did for the different like card types. But then you were like, well, aces can actually be combos of suits. And then I'm like, oh, well, then you could just have an ace card that can just be like any power then. You know what I mean? I just think ace is too good for what it is. Yeah, but I know the whole concept of ace is that it's supposed to be really good. But I think you can still have that without it being like, and it can be combinations of the other cards. I'd rather it be, it can do anything that any of the other cards can't do. I'm okay with that because that means it has like its own exclusive abilities. I don't like the idea that it could potentially do combinations of what the other cards do. And then I also don't like the concept of there just being people who are just naturally disposed to being able to have more step ups. So, in other words, being able to have more adaptations than other people. I just think that's kind of odd. And then Kel said you can switch between your step up and step down. Okay, ballin'. And then Kel said, I think I'll get rid of that limitation of step ups. Okay, cool. Um, because I do think it's weird, the idea that some people would have more than others. Because it just seems kind of unfair. And from a reader's perspective, it would just be like, oh, well, I guess that character is just better. And therefore, even if they lose in this particular chapter, in the next chapter, I know that they have a potential to have more step ups. You know what I mean? So it is kind of odd. Now, of course, the reader may not know that. Then once the reader sees a character maybe gain more than one step up, so it's kind of weird. Kel said aces are supposed to be more powerful, but it's also more rare. For example, specialists in Hunter x Hunter. So I also don't really like specialists in Hunter x Hunter. Dun, 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 dun. And the reason why I don't like specialists in Hunter x Hunter is because I think Hunter x Hunter has a really good power system for how it tries to balance how things work. Because it's like, in order to get a strong effect of your power, you need to put equally strong conditions on your power. So what limits how your power, like how your ability works, is how strict the conditions in which you can use it are. And the more freedom you have with the power, the less your power actually can do. Specialists are in like a weird bubble where they can kind of do just about anything. Um, and while the conditions thing still holds true, it's it just feels a little unfair. And I get the idea of having it be rare and be special, but I just feel like a lot of those characters will. Kel said, "I'm not gonna get rid of the ace. Nothing against you, but I think you just don't like ace type abilities in general, and that's understandable. And I'm not saying that you have to get rid of it. I'm just saying that it's. Nor am I saying that I want you to get rid of it. It's just more of a thing where it's like I personally am not like a big fan of it. You know what I mean? I just feel like even in Hunter x Hunter's case, I would actually have preferred if specialist couldn't do other things. Like I would love it if specialist was anything that doesn't fit the other nin ability categories you can do in specialist, but you can't do those other things. I think that would be really dope. So it's just something like you said. In general, I feel like those abilities are kind of and I feel like even in Hunter x Hunter's case, it could have had a similar limitation, and I would have liked it a lot more. But yeah, I'm not saying that you like should change it or that I want you to change it or that you have to change it. I'm totally fine with you having it be the way that you want it to be. This is your vision, this is your creation. It's just I personally am like, I just feel like whenever I see someone appear and they have an ace ability, I'm gonna be like, oh, I don't like that guy. I don't like because they can just kind of do whatever they want. Um, are there any like strong drawbacks to ace at all? Like to having an ace ability? It just seems really good. Beth said, I like specialist type characters being able to do other things because I like the idea of them being well rounded, though the other things would not be near as strong as the specialty. When we're talking about specialist types, Beth, we're talking about something that is going to occur a little bit later in Hunter x Hunter, where they introduce like how powers work in Hunter x Hunter. And specialists are essentially people who in Hunter x Hunter you have different people who have different power types, and you can normally only do what falls in your type. And then for other power types that are related to yours, you can kind of do stuff in them, but you're really mainly limited to the type that you fall into. Specialist can do anything that doesn't fall into the types that are already listed, plus be able to do things from other types. And I think the being able to do things from other types thing is what I don't like. I feel like the whole point of having a specialist character would be this person has powers unlike anything else you see. Like that's what I kind of want to see. I don't want to see people who are like, I'm just jack of all trades and I can do literally anything. Um, because in the end, what makes a power, I guess, interesting is the limitations of how that power is phrased and like defined. Let's see. Then Kel said, "Can you go over the character I made on the amino?" He said, "If you want to keep it one post per person, or if you feel like it's too long, that's fine." Kel said the limitations of aces is within the abilities themselves, which I understand that. It just seems like the way those abilities could be phrased, they could potentially do anything and everything. Um, I guess it really depends on the personality of the person who has it. Then Beth said, I second seeing Kels's character. No problem. So Kels's character is Velboro, and it's his character that he's introduced for OC battles. So OC battles is something that we're going to start trying to do more on the channel. Is where you guys can introduce your original characters that you've created, and we do a discussion on who will win in a fight between the character that you've introduced and someone else's character that they've introduced. So if anyone has any original characters they'd like to show us and have featured in like an OC battle where we talk about who would win, I would highly recommend posting said character on the amino so we have an easy way to access these characters. Then Beth said, "Would HypnoKitty or Kels's character win, and why?" Well, for one, Beth, I would recommend telling the audience about HypnoKitty, and potentially, like I said, doing a post on the amino. Posting on the amino is really helpful because everyone can look at it and see what you've written about the character, like what the character is capable of, and what they have, and like a little bit about them. I honestly want the OC battles to be limited to maybe writing like a few sentences. So I'm fine with you going into deep detail about a character's background. You can have like the longest background you want listed for like a character, but then when it comes to the powers themselves, like how we're gonna discuss them in the fight, I'd want it to be limited to like two sentences. to describe like the character's powers, just so that when we're talking about the actual fights, we don't have to look through like a very thick thing to get a solid understanding of them. Also, Beth said I gotta download Amino Scrub. So you can actually use Amino on your computer. That's what I'm doing now, because I'm actually streaming using my phone, so I can't use Amino on my phone, which is why I'm using it on my computer. Okay, let's see. So Kel says, "Sorry, I gotta go." He said, "I'll answer any questions you have about my character after the stream." Okay, no problem, Kels. Hope you have a wonderful night, and thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to smash that like button if you haven't already, and I'm excited to see you on the next stream. Peace. Let's see. So, Kels has set up his character. I think his name is Velbiro or Velbiro. I actually don't know how to pronounce it. Um, and there is a good bit written about his character. I think for now I'm going to focus on just going over a few of the things that he put at the very beginning. So the name of his character is Velbero. He exists within the poker game universe, which is the universe of the manga that he's creating. He is 6 foot tall, 19 years old. His poker game card ability, well, card suit is the Hearts card. The sport that he's gonna play in the game, he said he hasn't thought of the name of the sport yet, but it's basically just a battle royale. He's a member of the team called the Victory Eagles, and he can regenerate any part of his body. So that's his like main power, it seems like. But he also has a spirit martial arts thing, which I still actually don't know what spirit martial arts are yet, because it's a part of part three of Kels's poker game universe power system description. But he has Aura, Soul Vein, and Soul Burst, which are all things that I'm not familiar with. And then he has a description of what they are. Okay, but the description's kind of long. So Soul Vein and Soul Burst explanation. Soul Vein is when you fill all the blood vessels in your body with spirit. It's similar to Aura, which I still don't know what that is, but gives a stronger boost and is more difficult to learn. Let's see. Real quick, Rex said, "Dude, you that guy and the song guy. This is America." People say that quite often, that I look like Childish Gambino. Yo, Rex, welcome to the stream. It's good to have you. How's your day today? Do you have any questions for your boy? Do you have any discussion topics you'd like to talk about on the stream? And don't forget to smash that like button. It's really appreciate it. Right now, we're looking at an original character created by one of our viewers, that one guy, Kels. His character's name is Velbiro, and he wants to start using this character in what we're going to start OC battles. OC battles being you introduce an original character, and we have a discussion about who would win in a fight between your original character and another original character, either belonging to me or one of the viewers. So if you happen to have any OCs that you would like to discuss who would win battle scenarios about, this is definitely like the time and the place for it. Kells is currently gone, and I do feel like a lot of the stuff that's being dived into about his character are things that I'm not gonna fully understand until I read part three of his power system thing, his power system guide, which I'll definitely read tomorrow. I've been trying to read just one part of it per day, and then we discuss each part. But since Kells is currently gone, I think I'll wait on jumping in on Velbiro a little bit, so that we can continue the course, of the conversation in any direction that you guys really want. And then if Kells was to return, for whatever reason, we could like come back to this, and of course we could always discuss this tomorrow. But for now, we can just chill. I think someone is like drying their hair upstairs, so and also the air conditioning is running. So please don't mind the background noise. It's just a part of the circumstance. But yeah, I am excited to learn more about Kells' character. But like I said, I'll probably wait for Kells to get back before diving deeper into reading about his OC. And also, I'll wait until I read part three of his power system, because then I feel like I'll be able to understand a lot more about what Kells is discussing uh, after I read part three. So, yeah, it seems like those were the big topics that we've hit. Just to give you guys a quick recap, I talked about my day to day, and then I talked about Kells's power system, the second part of it, and I almost dived in on Kels's character, but since Kels dipped, I only like lightly looked at it. So now I'm ready to transition to any discussion topics that our current viewers would like to discuss, um, as well as if anyone just wants to talk about your day or have any questions, feel free to hit me up like right now. I am open to legitimately anything. So if you guys want to like talk about something, if you guys happen to have any questions, or if you just want to show your support and smash that like button, like feel free to. I am here. I haven't started writing Superpower Battles Volume 5 yet. I still need to figure out what powers the hero Volume 5 is going to have. Um, I met a guy the other day at Station Retro. His name's Hunter, and he does a lot of comic book art. And he showed me a few pages of what he's drawn, and he can do really impressive like comic style art. And he's interested in maybe doing like a collab. So I'm thinking maybe me and Hunter could talk and work on maybe him doing like a cover for Superpower Battles Volume 5. We'll have to see. But I think that would be cool. I also talked to Colin today, and Colin showed interest in maybe doing a collaboration thing. I feel like, from what Colin has said, Colin would want to be paid, which I understand that. If he was to do a cover, and I'm not necessarily against that, but I guess I'd be curious to see what the difference would be between Colin and Hunter when it came to how much money they would want to do a cover for like one of my books. Kels said, "I'm back. I won't be able to talk, but I'll be here." Okay. Kels, I actually put the Velboro discussion, or Velbiro, I don't know how to pronounce your original character's name. I kind of put that discussion on hold because of the fact that you had like dipped out. I was like, oh, well, it's starting to get into territory of stuff that I don't really know what it is. I think it relates more to Poker Game's Power System Part 3. And I was like, I kind of would want to ask Kels questions about this kind of stuff as I went through it. So I was like, I'll probably just wait until tomorrow to dive deeper into Velboro. Also, Kels, um, if you were to summarize how Velboro or Velbiro's powers were to work in like the two sentence format, because the two sentence format is just to make it more digestible and easier for us to discuss it in terms of who would win in a fight. Uh, how would you summarize it? Because I feel like that's very helpful, and the reason why I have the two sentence rule in regards to how like the powers work is so that it'll be easier for us to discuss that. Kel said, "It's fine if you wait till part 3. It'll be easier that way." Okay. Thank you kindly, Kel. Truly appreciate it. I had transitioned from that to talking about Superpower Battles Volume 5. I haven't started writing Volume 5 yet because I still haven't figured out what powers I'm going to have for the main hero Volume 5. I've talked with Hunter, a guy who works at Station Retro, who's really cool, by the way, and Colin about the idea of doing like an artist collab for maybe doing like a cover for Superpower Battles Volume 5. Colin has shown interest, but he also has shown interest from like a monetary perspective. He's like, I would want to be paid like money for the cover, which I understand that. No one likes working for free. Like I get that. Um, but when I talked to Hunter about it, Hunter seemed purely interested, and at least at the time, from the perspective of he really likes to draw, and that he's really into like superheroes and stuff. And I feel like he's more passionate about this particular type of project. And he seemed also really interested in like the story, and he like read through the template that I use for when I write my superpower battle stories, and he seemed interested from like that base perspective. So I think I'm kind of into that. Kel said I had to get more complicated with it to avoid any misunderstandings or oversimplification. And I understand that, like having like a big post to really show how the powers would work within the realm of poker game, and I get that. But for the who would win battles themselves, Kels, I would really like. I'm not trying to have you oversimplify your thing, as much as it is that I would like it to be simpler for the sake of discussion. Um, I think it's a lot easier to discuss who would win in a fight when the powers are not reduced, but summarized in such a way to where they're easier to digest and we can easily discuss how the powers work. I think a good example would be in a lot of the guidebooks that I read for like Marvel and DC characters, they'll have pretty brief summaries of like what characters' powers are, and they're pretty good about being able to keep them to like a couple sentences. And I feel like if they can do that for characters who have like bizarre, incredible feats in their comics, then I feel like that's something that we could do as well, and it would just make it a lot easier to talk about who would win. Just from my like personal perspective, I just think it would be easier for everybody involved. Because otherwise, you'll end up having people who will put like a ton into like a blog post, like a really long blog post about their character, and then for us to discuss who would win in a fight, it seems like everybody involved would have to read over like a really thick blog post to get like a good idea of like how the powers work and to get that understanding. And not only like just the one blog, but the blogs for both characters, and then new people coming into the discussion would kind of be alienated. There would be a info gap where we're talking about these characters that they wouldn't have any understanding of, and we'd have to like jump in deeper in order to fill them in as well as to discuss it amongst ourselves. I just feel like it kind of makes the who would win more complicated to have too much stuff. But I like the idea of having the big blog post in case people want to have more detail and to dive deeper in. I just feel like for the fight itself, there should be a, I'm not sure if I want to say truncated, but a truncated version. And I guess I want to look up the definition of truncate. Shorten by cutting off the top or the end. Well, that's not necessarily what I mean. I do mean like shorter, but I don't necessarily mean to cut off the top or the end. Kel said I disagree. For me, the more info, the better. But if I had to oversimplify it, he can regenerate, manipulate electricity, and manipulate his clothing. Manipulate his clothing? That's actually pretty interesting. And I understand what you're talking about where it's like, for more, the more the information, the better. I get that because that allows it to be like clearer and avoid misunderstandings, like you said before. At the same time, like I said, it's more for the idea of it's very easy to discuss, or easier to discuss who would win in a fight. This person has powers, and we can sum it up really quickly. This person has these powers, we can sum it up really quickly. Either than having a whole lot of information to go over. I feel like for one, it's easier for people to just write up two sentences and be like, "Yep, that's what my person can do," and then someone else also write up two sentences, and we just talk about those two sentences, rather than to have to comb over and be aware of so many different things to make it work. You know what I mean? But let's see. So regeneration, electricity manipulation, and he can manipulate his clothing specifically. Not any clothing, but specifically the clothing that he wears. So I think that's interesting because I don't know if that's necessarily like a telekinetic manipulation, like that he can like move his clothes the way that he wants, or to manipulate the properties of his clothing, like he can change how dense they are or like the color of his clothing. There's a lot that that could potentially do. Whereas with manipulate electricity, I feel a little bit safer to imagine that he can manipulate the flow or maybe even like the voltage of different charges, or that he could generate charges and have like bolts of lightning like go across his fingers and project lightning blast. But for his clothing, I'm not entirely sure how he's manipulating it. Whether it's a full manipulation of his clothing, where he can potentially do anything with his clothing that he wants, or if it's just like he can change certain properties of his clothing or just move it with his mind. Regeneration and manipulation of electricity kind of remind me of Savage Dragon. Savage Dragon can do that, like both of those things, where he can regenerate and he can manipulate electricity. But his third power, instead of manipulating his clothing, is super strength. So I feel like those would be two characters that would be interesting to face off against each other because they have similar abilities to a point. Then Kel said, "Okay, I actually go now. See you later, fam squad." He said BYW is pronounced Vibiro. Vibiro. Okay, thank you, Kami. I appreciate that. Hope you have a wonderful night, Kels, and I will catch you later. Thank you for tuning in. I hope to see you on tomorrow's vlog. So let's see. Um, so I guess I want to break down the very short sentence that he gave about the powers. Because it doesn't have to be that short. It could legitimately be like 2 sentences long, and you can say a lot with 2 sentences. But with that, um, if he can regenerate, manipulate electricity, and manipulate his clothing, then I feel like regeneration is definitely more of a defensive ability rather than an offensive ability. Like, rarely do you hurt someone by regenerating. So, regeneration is a defense. A good counter to regeneration would be to degenerate something. So, kind of more or less just like destruction. Um, so, as soon as you can regenerate something, I can like destroy it, or I can destroy something completely, which would then make it where you couldn't necessarily bring it back. Uh, that could also be interesting. So something like a character with a Hakai style ability could try and counter his regeneration. Um, then manipulate electricity. So manipulate electricity can go either way. That can be an offensive ability or a defensive ability. The best way to counter that normally would be to have someone who can absorb electricity. So in a lot of cases, regardless of if you're using it for offense or defense, if your opponent can more or less suck it in like a sponge and hold that, then instead of you harming them, depending on what their absorption capability allows them to do, you could be empowering them. Maybe they're like a battery, and the more electricity they absorb, maybe the stronger they become or the more stamina they have. So I feel like that would be like a nice counter to that second power. And the third power, manipulate his clothing, I think is kind of a wild card, because that could be seen very vaguely to what manipulate his clothing could mean. Uh, I would argue that a destruction power, in the same way that destroying something can help counter regeneration, that if you can destroy stuff already, you can probably destroy clothing. So I would say a good counter to Kels's character, Vibiro, would be a character who can destroy things, maybe through some energetic force. Maybe they have a destruction touch where if they touch things, they're destroyed. Um, but someone who more or less can just erase things. I think that would be like a pretty good counter to that. And then for the manipulate electricity, someone who can absorb electricity and maybe use it to do something, I think would be a good counter. And then, of course, to destroy the clothes. So Beth asked earlier who would win in a fight: Hypno Kitty, one of her original characters, or Kels's character Vibiro. So I actually have an answer, I guess. So Beth hasn't really gone over Hypno Kitty, but I can explain her pretty well. She has one power, and that's hypnosis. So if she stares into your eyes, she can hypnotize you. And she's one of the strongest hypnosis-based characters in Beth's superhero universe that she's creating. But Hypno Kitty also has a hypno flute. It's a flute where if she plays a little tune on her flute, she can hypnotize people. So it's kind of like a backup. If for whatever reason she's blinded or she can't look into your eyes or she can't make eye contact with you for whatever reason, she can use the hypno flute in order to hypnotize you. But if you were deaf and blind, you would be immune to both of her forms of hypnosis because she wouldn't be able to. Well, it's not that she wouldn't be able to stare into your eyes, but you wouldn't be able to make eye contact with her if you couldn't see her, and then if you couldn't hear, you wouldn't be able to hear the hypno flute. Um, Kels's character does not have any built-in defense against hypnosis, but HypnoKitty has no built-in defense against electricity. Um, I guess it very much depends on the setting of the fight. If HypnoKitty can be far enough away, or maybe just be somewhere where Vibero can't see her. I think I know a good place for HypnoKitty to fight him. If they were in like a movie theater or like some sort of large auditorium with like surround sound speakers or something to that effect, HypnoKitty could play a tune over the loudspeakers, and then Vibero would not necessarily know HypnoKitty's exact location because the flute music would be playing from all directions. And then if Vibero listens to the flute music, then he'll fall under HypnoKitty's hypnotic trance, which would then allow HypnoKitty to pretty much do whatever she wanted. She could even have Vibero. Huh. My brain thought of two different things as I was saying that. Thing number one, if Vibero's regeneration ability isn't inherently tied in to him needing to consciously activate it, like if it was something that occurred passively, HypnoKitty could try to hypnotize Vibero into like self-harm, but then he could simply regenerate it back if it is passive. Now, if HypnoKitty could hypnotize Vibero into not regenerating, that would be a totally different ballgame. Because if she could have that much control over him, then he's not coming back from that. You know, she could be like, "You are under my command, don't regenerate. Like, defeat yourself." And then Vibero could just defeat himself, maybe use his electricity powers to, like, fry his body. And then without having his regeneration active because he, like, fried himself, he could lose from that. I could legitimately see that. At the same time, I feel like Vibero, like, let's say it's the same auditorium setup, where he's surrounded by these speakers and they're playing HypnoKitty's hypno flute music. She's trying to hypnotize him into shutting off his regeneration powers and harming himself with electricity. Vibero technically could use his electricity manipulation powers, depending on how well he can sense the electricity he manipulates, to fire electricity through the speakers. Like, if they're electric speakers, he should be able to, like, sense where the speakers are and then sense the movement of electricity through them and maybe find the source, like find the microphone that HypnoKitty must be playing the flute into. He then could, like, short circuit the speakers by pushing too much electricity through and cause them to, like, explode or be fried. And then by doing so, he can stop the surround sound speakers and figure out where HypnoKitty is, and then fire, like, a precise bolt of lightning at HypnoKitty's location, and she wouldn't really have any real defense against that. Rocky Ford popped into the live chat. He said, "Hi there." He's doing good today. He said, "Who is your favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! GX character?" And 3, Dick Daxterly is the discussion topic that he'd like to discuss. So I'm glad that you're having a fantastic day today. The question that he had for me is, who is my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! GX character? I don't want to be a basic scrub, but probably Jaden, like the main guy from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Didn't watch a lot of the anime, but I have read a little bit of the manga. I may be like halfway through the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX manga. It's been a while since I've read it, but I definitely enjoy Jaden and the arc that he has through the manga, as we get to learn about what got him into dueling and what makes him such a great duelist. So, say probably Jaden. And then Dick Dastardly. The name sounds familiar. I don't know who that is off the top of my head. But that's a discussion topic that you want to talk about. So Dick Dastardly seems to be the maniacal villain character from Wacky Races. I, believe it or not, have never seen wacky races. So yeah, uh, that's just a new thing for me. So what about Dick Dastardly would you like to talk about? I'm not entirely familiar with the character, but I think it would be an interesting discussion. Um, hmm. So we got about 10 minutes left on the stream. I was talking about who would win in a fight between an original character created by my girlfriend Beth and an original character created by Kells. Kells' original character, Vibiro, has the ability to regenerate, manipulate electricity, and manipulate his clothing. And HypnoKitty has the ability to hypnotize you by holding eye contact and playing a flute that's music can hypnotize you. Rocky Ford said in Dastardly and Muttley in their flying machine. So they have a flying machine. I can look that up. So Dastardly flying machines. And then Rocky Ford said he drives the Mean Machine. So was that its own show as well? Like not just wacky races, but its own thing? That's interesting. I'm kind of learning more about Dastardly because I did not know that he had his own show to himself. I haven't seen that or Wacky Races. That kind of makes me think there's a lot of Hanna Barbera stuff that I just haven't really looked into. Um, and I wouldn't mind seeing like a complete list of Hanna Barbera stuff. Apparently, Dastardly and Muttley in their flying machines, the show that you just introduced me to, has a Japanese version, uh, which also sounds interesting. And it has a Japanese voice cast, which makes sense. I'm curious if there are any big differences between the Japanese version and the other version or not. Rocky Ford said yes, his friends Clunky and Zilly, like silly, but with a Z. Interesting. Yeah, I personally have not heard about this show before. Um, but it seems like it could be like a good old school watch. Um, I noticed that on the Wikipedia page they have a chronology section that says related shows wacky races. Um, but it doesn't specify if Dastardly and Muttley and their flying machines happens to take place before, after, or during the events of wacky races or not. So I think that's interesting that it's kind of left to be a little bit vague. Let's see. So I don't think Beth is still watching at the moment, nor do I think Kells is still watching at the moment. So for now, I'm gonna put the whole who would win in a fight, Hypno Kitty or Vibe Bureau thing. I'm gonna shelve that for now, because if neither of them are here, then I don't think anyone is particularly invested in that conversation. So Rocky Ford said they tried to use flying machine to stop the pigeon. So what is the pigeon doing? Like why do they want to stop it? Is the pigeon like a carrier pigeon that like is sending messages places? And if so, what messages is what what do the messages say and who are the messages for that would make Dastardly want to stop the pigeon? Because that's what I would guess. I imagine that Dastardly is like an evil villain, and that the pigeon probably is taking messages to like important people, and that Dastardly is like, for my scheme to work, the messages must never arrive. Rocky Ford said he's always flying around with a helmet and blows a horn. Um, do his different flying machines have different like fancy gadgets and defenses and abilities that he tries to use in order to stop the pigeon? I guess that's what I would imagine. And I also would imagine that the pigeon either isn't aware of Dastardly and Dastardly's plans seem to just kind of fall apart on their own, or that the pigeon is aware of Dastardly and is able to work around whatever Dastardly is trying to do, like cleverly. Rocky Ford said Clunk tries many inventions. Okay, so Clunk is the one who like makes the different gadgets and stuff. Could you tell me a little bit more about the personalities of like Dastardly and Muttley and Clunk and Zilly? They have interesting names for sure. They're actually fun to say. I will say that. Dastardly feels a little bit long every time I say it, but like Muttley and Clunk and Zilly, I think are like fun names. I like them. Hmm. Thinking about it, I think the Viburo versus HypnoKitty fight discussion could have been pretty interesting if Beth and Kels were both online. Hopefully tomorrow we can bring that back up while they're both here and discuss it and see what their thoughts are. Let's see. So Rocky Ford said Dastardly gets phone calls from the general. Is Dastardly not actually a bad guy? Is the pigeon a bad guy? Because when you said phone call from the general, it kind of makes the it kind of makes it sound like he's working with the government, like he could be like a good guy, trying to stop maybe a pigeon that belongs to like an enemy military force or something, like that kind of thing. Which that would be interesting. I'm so used to whenever there's a villain trying to go after like a smaller animal, well, a character trying to go after a smaller animal, that is normally whoever's going after the smaller animal is the bad guy. Like in Tom and Jerry, Tom is a big cat trying to go after a little mouse, so Tom is kind of the bad guy. And then with like Sylvester and Tweety, Sylvester is the big cat trying to go after the little bird, so Sylvester's the bad guy. And then you got like Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner. You know, Wile E. Coyote is trying to get at this bird who's not really trying to mess with him. Wile E. Coyote's the bad guy. Or like Elmer Fudd and Bugs Bunny. Elmer Fudd's just trying to hunt Bugs Bunny. Bugs Bunny's not doing anything. Elmer Fudd's kind of the bad guy. So I kind of thought it was one of those things where Dastardly was taking on that kind of role. Yo, Poco, welcome to the stream. It's good to have you. How's your day today? Do you have any questions for your boy? And do you have any discussion topics you'd like to talk about on the stream? Also, don't forget to smash that like button. Truly appreciate it. Right now, we're talking about Dastardly and Muttley and their flying machines, which is a show I had never heard of before. But Rocky Ford has been telling me more about the show. Do you have any questions for your boy or any discussion topics you want? As well as just, no, I think those are the two things: questions, discussion topics, or if you just want to talk about your day. Also, totally open to that. Poco said done. I believe that's Poco saying that he smashed that like button. Thank you kindly, Poco. Truly appreciate it. Check it about. Your profile picture looks different. On my computer screen, it's too small for me to like really make out what the image is, but I can tell that it's not the image that I've seen before. Rocky Ford said Clunk talks crazy. Is Clunk a robot? He kind of has like a robot sounding name. Um, and what do you mean talks crazy? Like he's like insane, kind of crazy, or that he has like a crazy kind of voice? Yeah, because crazy could be like any kind of thing. Is it like the way he says things is crazy? Or is it that he just sounds crazy when he talks? Which could also be a very similar thing. It's kind of hard to differentiate that. But I do think it's interesting for me to try to piece together more about the show from the little messages that you're sending. Rocky Ford said no. So Clunk is not a robot. That's good to know. So Clunk is an inventor, and he creates a bunch of gadgets, which I imagine they use to try and stop the pigeon. But I still don't know what the pigeon does. Then Rocky Ford said Zilly is the nervous one. So I imagine Clunk does something along the lines of create a new invention and go, surely this will finally, well, Clunk talks crazy. So I'm gonna try and do my crazy Clunk voice, I guess. I don't know what Clunk sounds like, but I've made another marvelous invention that I'll be able to use in order to get that pigeon. And then I imagine Zilly goes, well, I don't know about that, Clunk. Do you think it'll be a good idea to try and use that in one of our flying machines? I imagine they have like some kind of rapport like that. but I could be wrong because I've never seen the show before. Ray King then said, Discord is better. Yo, Ray King, welcome to the stream. It's good to have you. Don't forget to smash that like button. How's your day today? Do you have any questions for your boy? And do you have any discussion topics you'd like to talk about on the stream? So right now, we're talking about Dastardly and Muttley and their flying machines, which is a show I've never heard of. But we actually hit the 1 hour mark, so I'm actually going to end the stream for today. I'd like to thank you all for watching and tuning in. If you like this video, make sure to smash that like button, favorite, comment, subscribe, and ding, 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 ring that notification bell to be notified whenever we do these live streams. Thank you all once again for tuning in. This is your host, your friend, your boy, Jet Black, the one and only, logging out. Peace, guys. Here we go.